Hey everyone, Works here. So we're back with some alpha test development notes. The week 5 of the alpha testing is coming. Holly Longdale has come out, who's one of the top bigwigs at Blizzard right now, saying that beta is coming soon. So hopefully this means, since I've been unfortunately unsuccessful in getting into alpha, hopefully this means I can get into beta and start playing with some of these classes that I'm really looking forward to potentially playing. Right now, based on everything that I've been reading and kind of how I interpret how the classes are playing, the leading candidate for me is going to be Demon Hunter. And it's not even because of Devourer, it's because I'm actually really intrigued to try Havoc, and then I want to try Annihilator Vengeance, because it seems pretty interesting to me. So, plus Eldrachi Vengeance seems like it's gotten a lot of good quality of life to hopefully make it a little bit better as well, so that kind of intrigues me. Warrior and Druid are still very much in the mix, but yeah, we're gonna see. Let me crank down this music just a smidge. There we go. So let's go over these patch notes here. We'll touch on everything as we can. Now, I've seen a lot of people talking about this here that's on the screen now. I've got the right straight from the forums. Basically, is a lot of people are like, "Oh, they're tier set tuning. This tier set's broken. This tier set sucks." Guys, I literally don't give a fuck about tier sets right now. I will care about them later in development cycle. A lot of these are just tuning stuff. I do not care. This is what I actually care about. It's how the class is actually going to function at its baseline. So, as I've done with past development note videos, I'll chapter all this out below here. So if you're looking for a specific class, then be able to do that. So if you're looking for example, like warrior stuff, you're probably going to want to go click over that way towards the end of the video, because it's where it's going to be. So let's get right into it. Let's start with Death Knight. So they're making some adjustments to hero talents here for Rider of the Apocalypse. So the DPS DK shared talent tree. Mograin's Death and Decay now extends the duration of diseases on the target by 1 second whenever it deals damage. I think that's a good little quality of life change. One of my big complaints about Unholy, at least in its current form, is that it feels like every 5 GCDs you're refreshing your diseases, and that doesn't feel good in the current wounds mechanic. Now, I haven't played Unholy in its completely reworked version, which I am intrigued by, but at the same time, I want to be able to see. I probably need to go find a DK creator and see what their thoughts on it are. But my gut tells me this is fine, especially for Frost DK, since Frost Fever is starting to become a bigger part of their aspect too. And I've been playing Frost DK in Remix. Now it's Remix. It's designed to not be all that important, frankly. And your class design literally doesn't fucking matter, because everything is based into your quote-unquote artifact ability to clear content, so whatever. But I know that, the little bit of Frost Decay that I've played, I get why people are playing it a ton, and go from there. Sand Lane, so Unholy and Blood's shared tree has Infliction of Sorrow, no longer causing Scourge Strike or Heart Strike to consume the diseases after the gift of the Sand Lane ends. Again, I think that's probably a good thing, particularly because both specs rely a lot on their dot damage. Blood Decay in particular, even though they pop Blood Boil a lot, the shadow damage does stack up over time, and it helps them maintain their AoE threat on top of things like their Death and Decay. Because Blood outside of that doesn't really have good AoE threat unless it's standing in D&D. So taking away a source of AoE threat from Blood is not good. Alright. Now this is, I kind of glanced over this, talking about things like Pestilence, Blight, Burst, Festering Corruption, and it says Frost DK. This is actually Unholy DK, so forgive the typo from Blizzard. Who wrote this up? Was it Linux? Linksy. Linksy, please go back and correct that. Alright, new capstone talent is Pestilence. When Scourge Strike damages an enemy afflicted by your plagues, that has a chance to upgrade Outbreak to Pestilence. Pestilence consumes 100% of your plagues around you and deals 50% of their remaining damage instantly to gain a charge of Putrefy. Now again, I don't fully understand how the new Unholy DK works, but pulling a damage over time effect into is basically like a good funnel. Sounds like it might be either a funnel damage thing or a way to gain some burst damage towards the end of a pull. to gain Putrefy. I'm not convinced that's stellar, but someone smarter than me tell me. Blight Burst now has additional effect. Putrefy now applies to your plagues to unaffected targets. That's good. Plague spreading is always good to have, especially now that the spec relies much more heavily on plague spreading. Blight Burst now deals 35% of the damage your plagues would deal instead of 100%, and is now a third gate talent replacing Blightfall, so they move Blight Burst up in the tree, which is good. If you're nerfing it like that, you need to make it, you know, something that's going to be a lot more accessible and easy to justify taking. Putrefy now scales with Mastery. That's a weird oversight that now has been fixed. Good. They've fixed a bug with Putrefy to split damage when talented into Putrid Echoes. Good. Festering Corruption has been removed and its position has been filled with Blightfall. So Blightfall has been not necessarily replaced, but just adjusted. Festering Scythe is now a second gate talent behind Blight Burst. Reanimation now summons a Magus for 8 seconds instead of 15, so 50% duration, basically, reduction. Raise A-Bomb Disease Cloud damage increased by 100%, and then they move some talents around. So, if you're an Unholy DK fan, like, I'm a big Unholy DK fan, I just haven't kept up with Unholy DK a ton because, like, for me, one of the big things I love about classes is being able to find, like, 2 specs to enjoy, and when it comes to anything that involves a tank class, I always like to try, at least give the tank spec a complete shot. I've said this many times before to my guild members, and they always think I'm nuts. I've said this to a few other people, and they don't understand it, but I find Blood DK ridiculously boring. Like, it is the most boring tank to play. Over Bear. Like, people always claim that Bear's the boring tank. I disagree. I think it's Blood DK. And there's been nothing that in the Blood DK changes that indicate that I should change that. So I could be just like a pure DPS DK, but as someone that does like to roll flex to help out with keys and stuff like that, playing Blood in like a key situation, where even if I'm a DPS main in raid, just does not sound fun. And so it's a struggle that I've always had with DK over the last 2 expansions, is that I just don't enjoy Blood DK, and it makes it harder then to enjoy being just a pure like DPS one, although I'm kind of doing that with Warrior right now. Alright, Demon Hunter gets a lot of changes here, and the hero talents within Devourer sees a big stuff, so let's look at this over. Annihilator, Celestial Echoes has been updated, its consumed damage bonus was reduced, so a little bit of a nerf to that hero talent node. And then the Scarred Tree sees its new talent row, so Blind Focus, so you're not physical damage, is increased by, I'm assuming, 3 and 5%, and then it's doubled while in demon form, so 6 and 10. Undying Embers, your Immolation Aura / Soul Immolation has a, I'm assuming, again, 25, well, it's 25 for each one. Okay, no, I'm sorry. So it's 5% fire damage for Havoc, but 3% cosmic damage for Devourer. That's what that is. And then it's 25% chance on both to reignite after it expires, reapplying its effect. That's interesting. From a Havoc perspective, that means that you could basically avoid, like, if you get the proc right, then you either gain more stacks of Immo Aura, or in the case where you just need it to, like, prop up, like, a tier set bonus or something, then you don't save yourself the cast, and you can do more of, like, your normal chaos damage. And then Volatile Instinct. Entering demon form immediately induces a demon surge and causes your next void surge to repeat after a short delay. So that's good. So really playing more into the demon surge, the demonics types playstyles. Not bad. Not bad at all. Alright. Devourer gets a ton of changes, but let's look at the developer note. We're pleased with the state of Devourer and its reception thus far. The following changes are targeted at injecting some additional variety into talent builds, better focusing and expanding on the melee and ranged playstyles, while we are increasing the frequency of hungering / combo for players who want to engage with that portion of Devourer's kit. Lastly, we're significantly increasing the impact of Impending Apocalypse, while also making it easier to access alongside the Emptiness Soul Glutton choice node, to ensure that your Void Metamorphosis playstyle choice feels significant, and longer Void Metamorphosis windows are rewarded with noticeably increased damage from Collapsing Star. So, again, haven't played it, but from the following around of the spec that I've done, and the paying attention to it that I've done, is that the Devourer spec was, like, the in and out hungering / build, which is the one that's actually more intriguing to me, wasn't really viable. It was doing like almost no damage. It felt really slow and clunky to play. Whereas the more ranged based playstyle, the Annihilator build, was a lot more engaging, but did have a situation where your rewards felt like they were eventually getting ceilinged out if you maintained a metamorphosis. I think if it was for longer than like 40 seconds, it just felt like if you could keep it going for 60, then the damage you were doing at 40 seconds versus the damage you were doing at 60 seconds felt very flat and unrewarding as a result. That's my understanding. Alright, so they're putting in a bunch of new talents. So Void Rush, Collapsing Star reduces the cooldown of Void Blade by 10 seconds. Void Blade and the Hunt briefly reduce your Fury Drain while in Void Metamorphosis. So this is more for the ranged build, so I like that. That's good. Anything that briefly reduces your Fury Drain for that Annihilator build, I think it's going to be very good. Void Blade, I think, is just their version of Fell Blade, if I recall correctly. Demonic Intent, Void Ray and Hungering Slash damage increased by 20%. Cool. I think this is going to benefit Hungering Slash more than Void Ray, but we'll see. Soulforge Blades, Hungering Slash and Void Blades critical strike chances increased by 15%. I don't know how the stats are working for Devourer right now. My understanding is it's a pretty heavy haste mastery build, so giving it some, additional baseline crit chance is probably not a bad thing. Devourer's Edge, Reap and Consume damage is increased. I think this is pretty good. It's a pretty generic talent that you would find at near the top of most trees, honestly, or in the middle of a tree, so that's fine. Singular Strikes, Void Blade damage increased by 25%. Hungering Slash deals 50% increased damage to its primary target. I think it's going to be a mandatory talent to take, honestly, in both builds, just because Void Blade does a big... It's not like Collapsing Star Void Ray levels of damage, but it is still a pretty significant chunk of your damage in the Devourer playstyle, or excuse me, in the Annihilator playstyle, so good stuff. Gift of the Void, flat 2% critical strike chance increase. So I've been on record that I really, really hate talents like this. Like, stuff that just gives a flat secondary stat or a tertiary stat upgrade. Like, they're boring talents that at times feel mandatory just because, especially if it's a stat that you really like. And I hate them. I don't think these are creative talents or things that you should be spending time designing as a talent point. You can just do something else that's more influential on how the spec plays. I've also been on record that I think the current talent trees have been a mistake, and they should have just taken the old mop style talents and done more with them. Alright, Improved Consume. Consume deals 10% increased damage, and its cast time is reduced by a quarter second. The quarter second reduction doesn't really feel that impactful, I don't think. Increased damage is fine. Maybe a half a second off would feel better, but we'll see. Void Purge. Void Ray's cooldown during Void Metamorphosis is reduced by 2 seconds. I don't mind a talent like that. That's basically saying, hey, when you're in your metaform, which is kind of the whole point of especially the Annihilator gameplay, the ranged gameplay, you just get more opportunities to get your Void Ray up, which I believe does give you Fury Generation, which means you can maintain your Metamorphosis even longer. It's kind of the whole point of the gameplay loop. Umbral Blade. Reap's cooldown is reduced by 1 second. Sure. I don't remember the cooldown of Reap off the top of my head, so this could either be pretty decent or it could be just garbage. Singed Spirit. Soul Immolation generates an additional 12 Fury over its duration. Again, anything that allows you to peek out your time and Void meta is going to be a good thing. Void Blade has been updated. Its cooldown reduced to 30 seconds and no longer has its cooldown reduced by 45 seconds. I'm always on the fence about hasted cooldowns. Like, some of them I think are good. Things like tank defensives I think should all be hasted cooldowns. So like Shield Block should be a hasted cooldown. Demon Spikes is a hasted cooldown. I think the like Brewmaster Brews are not hasted cooldown, but that spec is kind of designed around absolutely loathing haste. Paladin's a little bit different in that it's got a builder spender playstyle, but Blessed Hammer and Judgment are both hasted cooldowns, which are your generators to allow you to shield more. Iron Fur doesn't have a cooldown; it's more of a rage spender, but the ability's tied to being able to generate rage. I could potentially be hasted cooldowns. So like outside of Brewmaster, I think stuff that's hasted cooldown is fine. for DPS specs, I'm always like a little wary of hasted cooldowns, because unless it's on something that you cast often on a charge system, where getting it more just helps you hit like your peak button more often, then I'm okay with that. But like there are certain specs where having hasted cooldowns, where you get to those like really weird breakpoints of haste, where it makes that like ability not line up cleanly with the rest of the kit, and then it gets to be really awkward. So like it kind of depends on that. Alright, Impending Apocalypse has been buffed to be 30% increased damage versus 15. Void Glare boon was reduced from 20 Fury gained to 10 Fury gained. Focused Ray has been updated, which now gives Void Ray more small target cleave and single target buff, frankly, so good there. Star Fragments has been updated to grant only 3 souls instead of 5. Void Rage has been updated to increase mastery by 2 and 4%. Hungering Slash now causes Hungering Slash to grant temporary charge of Vengeful Retreat. Causes your next Vengeful Retreat within 6 seconds to deal additional cosmic damage. So I'm curious about this one because, like I said, I'm very intrigued by the Scarred playstyle for Devourer, that melee in and out, where you might spend a little bit of time in melee, Vengeful Retreat, and Cosmic Star, and then you're back in with like a Fellblade like ability, slashing and damaging again, and then you retreat out and hit the big ones. Gives you like to me gives like a cleaner damage profile versus doing all range and sitting at, you know, at 25 yards the whole time. I really like that idea of in and out. It's a dynamic gameplay loop that does not exist in the game. Even Demon Hunter mobility builds don't really fit that because they don't have something like a Void Ray, like a Immolation, or like Cosmic Star to be able to do that. Like with the mover builds in Vengeance, the anytime spent outside of melee is like lost damage time, and if you get caught in like a bad mechanics overlap, like you just lose so much damage. So offering that flexibility with Devourer, I think is a good thing. Alright, Devourer's Bite has been updated. No longer increases Void Blade damage by 50%, so they just took that part off the tooltip in the function. Duty Eternal now increases Void Blade damage by 100% versus 25%. Big buff to that one. Void Purge has been updated. Now reduces the cooldown of Void Ray and Void Metamorphosis by 2 seconds. Hello? Hungering Slash deals damage reduced beyond 5 targets and eradicates on 5 targets. We receive fixed an issue causing Devourer Demon Hunters to receive less intellect on the gear than other specializations. As such, they gain significant power, so we're tamping down their power to compensate. So they had a bug fix with their primary stat. So they basically didn't target cap it, essentially. But they fixed that bug, and all of a sudden it was like, holy shit, these guys are dominating. So they had to tamp the power down by target capping them. I'm generally anti-target cap, but in cases like this where it kind of makes sense as to why they're doing it, like they at least give reasoning why they're target capping and not just making it arbitrary like Fury Warrior. An Arms Warrior. Like Arms Warrior I kind of get, like they want it to be the king of 2 target setups, but like what shit Mythic Plus does 2 targets, like frankly. Whatever. And then they did a bunch of damage tuning, mostly reducing the damage of a bunch of abilities. They adjusted the starter build, they renamed the talent, and then they pulled out these 4 talents overall. So again, not fully understanding the spec yet because I haven't played it, haven't been able to experience it. I generally think on paper, based on how my understanding of the spec functions, I think they were generally successful with these changes, particularly when it comes to the collapsing star side of things. I don't know how successful they're going to be on the Scarred side of things, that in and out melee build. We'll have to see. Alright, let's move on to Evoker. Some small changes to Evoker. Master of Destiny has been removed from Preservation's Chrono Warden talent, which is probably okay. Augmentation got the cooldown manager updated, so now works better with the changes they made to Aug recently. Temporal Anomaly got the 12-yard radius instead of 10 yards. I like that a lot as someone that's been playing Preservation, particularly Mythic Plus. And then, of course, they adjusted the cooldown manager and gave it a 10% aura healing nerf. My understanding is they were doing a ton of healing, so it's whatever. Again, it's a a numbers tuning thing so that they can try to get better data on other specs. Alright, Hunter got some small changes here. The Sentinel hero talent, so this is marksmanship and survival. Stalk and Strike now reduces the cooldown of Wildfire Bomb by 10 seconds instead of 1 charge. That probably makes more sense considering the charge cooldown timer, so I think that's probably an overall buff to survival. Moonlight Chakram damage increased by 900%. Holy shit, was that ability just not doing anything? Like, it's doing 1 damage. Now it's going to do 900 damage. And then takedown damage increased by 100% as well. So some big buffs to the Sentinel talent tree for MM and survival. Alright, some Apex talents for the range specs. Let's look at Beast Masteries. Nature's Ally. Bestial Wrath also calls forth a powerful dire beast to fight along you for 10 seconds. Cool. Damage dealt by your pets is increased by 10%. Fine. And then when you summon a dire beast, your next kill command has a 100% increased crit strike chance and causes the target to bleed for an additional 20% of the damage dealt over 8 seconds. They did say that this is not fully implemented. So my stance on this is fine. I'm sure the math nerds will find out if the 4 points required to invest in this is going to be worth it. Depending on how powerful that dire beast is, it could be worth it just for that alone, in which case you would probably go through with the next kill command. But it kind of depends on the damage tuning of that versus just having extra talents in your spec tree. Excuse me. MM, Deadly Insight is the name of their Apex talent. Let me do this. Let me blow this up just a smidge. When you gain Lock and Load, Surging Shots, or Death Blow, your next related aim shot, rapid fire, or kill shot will deal 25% additional bleed damage to the target over 8 seconds. So my question is what happens if you get like all 3 in like a very short window? Does it stack with all 3 of them? Like if you get a Lock and Load proc and then you get a Surging Shots and then you get a Death Blow when you're firing off, say, like your trick shots, does that make all like your next aim shot, rapid fire, and kill shot do extra bleed damage, or is it just one of those? Because if it's all 3, this is amazing. If it's only 1, then it kind of sucks, because now you're having to track your procs a lot more often, which is something that they've tried to avoid with this kind of approach to class design. So we'll see. You do 8% increased damage against enemies affected by Deep Insight's bleed. I'm assuming it's Deadly Insight's bleed. And then when you consume Lock and Load, Death Load, or Surging Shots, you have a chance to immediately gain one of the other effects. Okay. So, like, if you Lock and Load and then gain Death Blow, that aim shot will do the 25% bleed damage, and then I'm assuming the kill shot that you deal within, if it's within that 8 seconds, will do like a separate bleed? Or will it like stack and do 2 bleeds that each have their own timer on them? Like, there's some questions I have on how we're going to track that. Of course, it's not fully implemented, because why would it be? So we'll see what happens when we can actually let the hunters get their hands on it. Then a couple small changes for survival with quick reload and lethal calibration. They made adjustments to the talents because they swapped them in the places. So quick reload is getting less CDR because I'm assuming it's been moved up the tree. And lethal calibration is getting a higher CDR, 2 seconds per enemy versus 1 second, because I'm assuming it's lower in the tree. Alright, some extensive hero talent stuff for Monk. Alright, let's dive into this. Conduit of the Celestials. New talent, Path of the Falling Star. Celestial conduit damage is increased by 100% when striking a single target. Each additional target reduces its bonus by 20%. I'm okay with this because the problem with Celestial Conduit is on paper it looks like the quote-unquote AoE ability, but the reality is that the more enemies that it did, the less damage that it did. It was actually better to only do it in single target, which is why you saw a lot of Conduit of the Celestials gameplay in Liberation of Undermine, and why you're seeing a lot of it in Metaforge Omega still as well. So this is going to make it so that it has even more single target boost to it. So like it kind of doubles down on that effect. Yu'lon's Knowledge has been redesigned and now increases the damage of Rising Sun Kick by 15%. Okay. Heart of the Jade Serpent no longer decreases the cooldown time of Flying Serpent Kick. That's weird that it did it in the first place. Celestial Conduit no longer splits its damage and now deals reduced damage beyond 5 targets. That probably makes it generally a more predictable ability. Flight of the Red Crane has been removed. Oof. And then for Windwalker, Celestial Conduit's location has changed for Windwalker Monk, and Invoke Shuen has been added to the Windwalker Monk. Okay, I'm sure we're going to have to look at the Windwalker tree to figure out why that is. For Shadowpan, Initiator's Edge, movement speed is increased by 50% for the first 8 seconds of combat. As a Brewmaster, I adore the fuck out of this because it makes gathering mobs a little bit easier. For Windwalker, it's kind of whatever. Combat stance, rolls cooldown is reduced by 10%. Excuse me. To me, this is the reverse. As Brewmaster, I don't really care about this, but as Windwalker, this is really, really valuable. Rolls a 15-second cooldown, so this will make it 13.5 seconds. Wisdom of the Wall has been designed Zenith, which is Weapons of Order, essentially. Causes Rising Sun Kick and Spinning Crane Kick to launch 3 Flurry Strikes. So when you pop your cooldown, you're automatically going to get 3 Flurry Strikes launched. That's pretty decent burst damage on a cooldown that's already doing a ton for you. Veteran's Eye has been reduced, now increases haste by 5%. Hopefully that's only for Windwalker, because Brewmaster literally does not fucking care about that. Shadow of the Battlefield has been renamed to Shadow over the Battlefield. Oh, Shadow, they removed the W. Now deals nature damage, but it's reduced by 50%, so just making it a little bit more thematic. And Vigilant Watch no longer increases the damage of your next Flurry Strikes. Probably okay. New talent in the class tree. Touch of Death now heals you for 50% of the damage done. That's actually quite good. Particularly for Brewmaster, because you Touch of Death things for like... I mean, currently it's like 15 million HP, which is like 2/3 of your HP bar. It's ridiculous. They updated some icons, and then Bounce Back has been removed. That's probably okay, although I'm a little bit concerned about the consistent pruning of defensive abilities from Brewmaster, to where basically it only has Fort Brew and then its normal Purifying Celestial Brew now. Like, it has nothing for an emergency situation, and that's a little bit concerning. Alright, let's look at these Windwalker notes. Let's look at the dev note. This week's updates to Windwalker are focused on making Zenith, again previously Weapons of Order, a more powerful and satisfying standalone cooldown. As you invoke Shuen and White Tigers, move to the Conduit of Celestial's hero talent tree for Windwalker monks. This will entail introducing an optional modifier for its duration, but we're still looking to keep these to a minimum for Windwalker. We're also replacing a few talents we don't feel are accomplishing our goals and cleaning up Windwalker's visual profile to have less superfluous effects going on and to be more consistent with the core monk fantasy. Okay, so I don't like Conduit of the Celestials being how you gain access to Shuen, because you're not locking Yu'lon or Chi-Ji behind it. You still have Dave. Fuck Dave, I don't like Dave. But Windwalker now being the only one to not be able to summon a Celestial, when that's, to me, part of the core monk fantasy in WoW, feels very wrong. I don't like this approach as a, monk advocate. That saying, renaming Weapons of Order to Zenith is what the fuck ever. It's going to be confusing for a while until people learn it. Alright, new talent. Sunfire Spiral. Rising Sun Kick gains 20% additional effectiveness from Mastery Combo Breaker. You'll probably take that in single target. Although there are some talents now that give Rising Sun Kick a small AoE component. So depending on where this is at, potentially could be really strong. New weapon. Damage during Zenith is increased by 10%. This is stupid. Just bake it into Zenith. I hate fucking things that are quote improved. Like improved Celestial Brew takes you from 200 to 400% absorbed. Just bake that shit into Celestial Brew and give us a talent point back. Like, don't be... I fucking hate this thing. Martial Agility. Your melee attack speed is increased by 30%. The bonus is increased to 60% during Zenith. But what do Windwalkers gain out of melee white hits? Like, if they gain something... Like, it makes sense for certain, like, rogue specs because you gain damage off of your auto... Like, you gain energy off of your auto attacks. You're not gaining energy off of your auto attacks as Windwalker, so why do we care about increased melee attack speed? It literally does not matter. This is a stupid talent unless there's something else that gives you auto attack benefits of some kind. Tiger Fang, auto attack critical strike chances increased by 15%. Again, this is stupid because why? Why do we care so much about this? Why do we care so much about your auto attacks? Like, it feels like they're very deprived of ideas for Windwalker Monk, and so they're going back to like a very much a herp derp classic rogue style of, hey, your auto attacks matter. When it's gonna be 2026 here shortly, and like you're still doing auto attack shit that gives no actual fucking benefit to the Windwalker Monk other than, hey, you punch faster. That's fine, but like, what do I get for punching faster? Zenith Stomp. Activating Zenith requires you to release a powerful stomp, dealing significant nature damage to nearby enemies, reduced beyond 5 targets. This is just Chi Surge under a new name. Like, don't call it a new talent. Just say that you took Chi Surge and updated it. Universal Energy. Magical damage is increased by 15%. Again, why the fuck do we care about this when you're also baking in all this auto white hits that are all physical? Make it make sense. It doesn't make sense. This is stupid. This is incredibly stupid. Okay, Zenith does nature damage. Big fucking whoop-de-doo. Unless they've changed something and I missed it, like Rising Sun Kick, Fist of Fury, Blackout Kick, Tiger Palm. They're all physical damage. What does this do? What does this benefit? 3% of your damage profile? Fuck off with this. Jade Ignition no longer stacks an aura to increase Chi Explosives damage. That probably makes Jade Ignition worthless now. Combat Wisdom no longer increases the damage of Tiger Palm. It's probably fine, but seems kind of dumb. Teachings of the Monastery Blackout Kicks are not cast at 25% effectiveness. That is okay, but tied with the fact that they just did a 300% damage modifier to it. That's probably balancing out, but like, it's still kind of stupid. Jade Fire Stomp damage increased by 200%. Dance of Chi activation chance reduced by 33%. They probably destroyed that talent. They removed Chi Wave. They moved Invoked to Conduit. They removed Rushing Jade Wind. Storm Spirit Strikes, fine. Summon White Tiger Statue, probably fine. And Juen's Bond makes sense considering they got rid of fucking Juen. Overall, this makes no fucking sense. I don't know. I don't understand what their goals are with these changes. Like, why do white hits matter so much for Windwalker Monk all of a sudden, when white hits haven't mattered for any spec except like Assassination Rogue, not even Assassination Rogue, I think it was Combat Rogue only, in such a long time. It's been since like WoD that shit has mattered. And WoD was like over 10 years ago, remember, at this point. Yeah, don't forget, like, we're coming up on the release 10-year anniversary of fucking Legion. People still think that shit happened yesterday. I don't understand what their goal is here. Like, why does Universal Energy need to exist in this tree when you do so little magic damage? Why does auto attack damage matter when there's no other benefit gained out of the auto attack speed? Now, again, I might be missing something. Admittedly, I've not kept as close an eye on the monk changes because I'm not considering it as a main. Focus mostly on warrior, DH, and druid, but as a long-time monk player, I still like to try and keep up a little bit with what's going on with this class, and I just don't fucking understand what they're trying to accomplish here. This is incredibly stupid, in my opinion. And they need to think this one back again, guys. Like, either, like, if you're gonna insist on shit, like, because there's now like 4 or 5 talents that increased your melee attack speed, or have white hit implications in the talents, like, do something about that. Give it a chance to give you a chi point. Give it a chance to restore your chi, to restore your energy. Give it, like, something. And then all of a sudden, this talent might start making maybe a little bit more sense. Like, if you put, like, hey, you have a chance to apply a debuff that makes your auto attacks nature damage for 15 seconds. All of a sudden, this matters. Otherwise, this talent right here makes no fucking sense to me. I don't get it. Alright, a bunch of hero talent changes for Priest, it looks like. Archon gets a new talent. Power Surge lasts an additional 5 seconds. Sure. Holy gets a new talent in Realized Potential, Flash Healing. Healing increased by 10%. Healing spells to smite have an additional 2% chance to grant Surge of Light. Sure. I mean, you use Flash Heal a lot because it does give you your Serenity back quicker, so it's probably okay. And then Focused Outburst gives you Prayer of Healing, mana cost reduced by 10%, and cast time reduced by 15%. So if you're I'm assuming this is going to be a choice node, which means that this is probably okay. Alright, Realized Potential. So again, I'm assuming it's a choice node. For Shadow, it'll give Shadow Word Death damage increase and a 3-second CDR reduction. This will matter, like, if Execute Phase matters, but, like, the fact that it still tries to kill the Priest is kind of funny. Focused Outburst. Void Volley damage is increased by 15%, and its cooldown is reduced by 4 seconds. Sure. And then Shadow Apparition damage got a bit of a damage buff reduction from 25% to 10% via Spirit Well. Oracle. For Discipline, Word of the Wise. Flash Heal, Plea, Empowered Radiance Healing increased by 15%, so just a buff to the talents. Atonement Healing from Holy Spells is increased by 20%. That's probably pretty good. When Power Word Shield or Void Shield expires with Absorption remaining, it jumps to a nearby injured ally and loses 40% of the maximum absorb instead. I would lower this to 20, and maybe even only make it 10. But I like the idea of your absorbs bouncing around to different targets if they don't take the full brunt of the absorptions. I actually love that idea for Disc, but the absorb being drained by almost half seems kind of a steep cost. Unless the shields are just like super fucking fat, like if they're like 100% of your target's health, then okay, losing 40% makes sense. You're still getting a 60% shield. But if it's only like half your health and then you're losing 40% of that half, then like feels kind of like overkill. Alright, for Holy, Word of the Wise does Serenity and Sanctify Healing increase by 10%. Sure. Gives you a flat 5-second reduction on your Holy Words. I don't know if that is good or not because you get kind of a decent amount of CDR off of Serenity and Sanctify. Could be good for Chastise, which would be very useful in PvP and situationally useful in Mythic Plus. Then Unfolding Vision, when Prayer of Mending expires without healing, it jumps to a nearby ally and loses 2 stacks. Again, I'd make this 1 stack, but I don't mind this. Like, Holy's been pushed into a direction where Prayer of Mending is going to matter so much more. It makes sense. Alright, and then Disc class tree changes. Greater Smite increases the damage of Smite by 25% per sec versus 15. No longer increases the cast speed, so makes haste a little bit more valuable to them. So you gain more damage, but don't get the cast time reduction. It's probably a decent trade, and then they updated the cooldown manager. Rogue. I haven't seen very much in the way of rogue notes here, so Deathstalker, which is the Subtlety and Assassination tree. Precise Killer gives you increased crit strike damage. Fine, I don't think that matters as much as people think it does. Quietus Solaris. Deathstalker's mark has a 30% chance to immediately consume a stack when applied. That I don't know about how that would impact sub, but from an assassination standpoint, that's like fine. It's interesting potential like mini burst, but I don't think it's impactful. Mass Casualty. Deathstalker mark deals 50 for assassination, 80% for sub of its normal damage to all enemies that are afflicted by rupture within 8 yards. When a stack is consumed by black powder, deals reduced damage beyond 5 targets. Okay, so that gives it a little bit more AoE viability, but it was already like the best talent for, at least for assassination, it was the best talent. Hero talent tree, like by far, for AoE. Again, for sub, I think they were playing Trickster, but alright, Unshakable Drive now increases the damage of your next 3 of your next Shadow Strike by 20%. Other skills still 50%, and that stacks up to 3 uses. So nerfing Shadow Strike specifically, which I think is more for sub than it is assassination, because you're using ambush as assassination, not Shadow Strike out of stealth. So sure. So rogues, tell me what you think. For sub and Sin rogues, let me know. Alright. Warrior, my other kind of baby class right now. Barbaric Training, now 1 point talent. Good. Crushing Force, now 1 point talent. Good. And then Anger Banishment now affects the following abilities. Avatar and Colossus Smash for arms, so Avatar is coming back, thankfully. Avatar and Recklessness, and then Avatar and Shield Wall for prop. Makes sense. Alright, arms. New talent, Mass Execution. Cleave and Whirlwind deal 25% increased damage to targets below 35% health. This makes sense to me, actually, because in AoE situations, when you had like a full like party below, you would either just ignore anything that was like your execute outside of sweeping strikes, and you would like forsake cleave in favor of mortal strike buffing. Now that's going to be cleaned up a little bit to where you can do cleave or mortal strike depending on your target count, which I think is good. Avatar is back to the arms specialization, gives you a 20% damage dealt, and reduces the damage you take from area effects by 5% for 20 seconds. So small defensive benefit, the same offensive benefit. Alright, 30% chance to gain a charge of overpower when you use an attack that has a rage cost. That effect applies even if the ability's rage cost has been reduced to 0. That's good, because I know there were ways to get things like free slams that wasn't proccing Tactician for whatever reason. So now they're just making that Tactician proc a lot more smooth, which I think is a good thing. Brute Force has been redesigned. Slam has a 10% chance to increase chance to trigger Tactician. Considering Slam is becoming a much more important part, particularly of the single target rotation, probably take this in single target. Efficiency now gives Slam's rage cost reduction by 25%. So I think it's 30 rage to start. So let's see, 10, 6. It's gonna be like 7, maybe 8 rage. If you're flooded with resources, that 8 rage doesn't matter. You could probably skip that. If you're not flooded with resources, this is going to be an extremely important talent. Master Tactician has been redesigned. Tactician has 10% increased chance to trigger. So I think it's like 30% chance off based off rage spent. Now it's going to be 40% chance based off rage spent. And then the final point of the Apex talent, Master of Warfare updated, makes Heroic Strike reduce the cooldown of Colossus Smash by a flat 5 seconds. That's probably a good change, makes it, again, much easier to A, to tune, but B, makes it much more predictable for the player. Ignore Pain has been updated, so basically you ignore 50% of the damage taken for 12 seconds or until a certain amount of damage is taken. Rage cost removed, and the amount ignored per use is increased by 100%, but it triggers a global cooldown. So another defensive to go along with Die by the Sword, and to a lesser extent Impending Victory for your heal. Not a bad thing. Die by the Sword is really, really good for like doing like taunt parry shenanigans, but other than that, like, it's kind of as a defensive. Spell Reflect generally it's niche, but it does give that flat magic DR, but you have to know what is magic and what is not. And then this is going to allow you another way to kind of help you survive. Arms Warrior definitely a little bit more squishy than Fury because it doesn't have the sustain built into Bloodthirst that Fury does, so I think this is okay. Broad Strokes has been updated to give you sweeping strikes when you Colossus Smash. Okay, I don't mind that. Battle Lord has been updated, overpowers a 35% chance to reset the cooldown of Mortal Strike. Probably really good in single target. Ravager added as a choice in with Blade Storm. Cleave and Whirlwind deal 50% increased damage while Ravager is active and is now thrown at your target. To me, playing Arms without Blade Storm at this point in Arms' lifespan feels weird. It's probably going to be better damage, but I don't like it. Finishing Blows replaced with Overpowering Finish. Overpower deals 25% damage to targets below 35% health, leaning into their Execute niche. Soften Them Up, replaced with Martial Prowess. Overpower and Slam increases the damage of your next Mortal Strike by 5%, stacking it 3 times. This is kind of stupid because they took away the Overpower stacking for shit just for, quote, having to track too much, and then did this exact fucking thing. Like, this is dumb. Sharpened Blades now increases normal damage from Mortal Strike, Cleave, and Execute, as well as critical strike damage. Good. Dreadnought damage is increased by 180%. Big buffs to the talent. Bloodborne now increases the critical strike damage and bleed effects in addition to normal damage. Good. And they remove Blunt Instruments. Good. Exhilarating Blows. fine. Merciless Bone Grinder, good. And Spiteful Serenity, fine. Overall, mixed bag of changes in my opinion for arms. Like, some things make sense. Most of it does make sense, but there are a few things where I'm like, this is stupid. Why do this? Kind of my thoughts on a lot of the decisions being made with some of the classes here. Alright, for Fury, instead of getting the DR, you're getting 5% more movement speed. This seems kind of silly. Just give them the DR as well. And this gives you a 3% instead of a 5% DR. That's also fine in my opinion. Oh, this is just a flat DR. This is the AoE. I think you should give Fury the AoE reduction like Arms gets. And then they updated Ravager to do Revenge and Thunderclap damage. I think this is fine. Ravager has been a staple for Prot Warrior for a long time. And Revenge and Thunderclap are, big parts of the kit. So these changes, that changed for Prot, fine. Fury got basically nothing, although I still think Fury's not on a good path right now. These arm changes are, like I said, a mixed bag, and we shall see. So overall, you really need to rethink your Windwalker approach, guys. Like, I don't think this is a smart design space for Windwalker. Devourer, I'm curious to see. I think the Devourer changes are much more targeted towards the ranged playstyle. I want to see more with the melee in and out playstyle potentially, but again, I haven't really gotten a chance to play it, and I haven't been seeing a lot of people actually play the Hungering Void playstyle. I've been seeing them play the Collapsing Star Void Ray ranged playstyle. So hopefully I can find someone that's actually really diving into this spec from the melee hybrid standpoint. If not, I'll do it myself, frankly, since it's like I would say it's like 60% that I'm playing DH next expansion, with Druid and Warrior taking up the other 20% each. So expect me to be diving a lot more into the Demon Hunter, because frankly I've had a lot of fun with Demon Hunter in current retail. Even Vengeance, I'm starting to understand why it's appealing, and the things that I don't like about it are being peeled away in Midnight, which makes me even more interested in trying it. So definitely more open to giving this a shot. So let me know what you think about your class changes in the set below on all of that. Now, real quick before we get out of here, this is just data mined, so we don't know if this is true, but the tier tokens. So for the last couple of expansions, they've had tier tokens that were divided out by like arbitrary grouping of classes, like Paladin, Priest, Shaman. What we've seen now is that they are looking at possibly making the tier tokens based on armor type. And the thing that I have about this is, why hasn't it been this way forever? Like, this should have been how it's been from the start. This only makes sense. So let me know what you think about that. Are you in my corner where like this shit should just be the way that it is? Should always be grouped by classes? Like, why are we doing this? So let me know what you think. So until the next video, I hope you all stay safe. Hope you enjoy yourself. You're having fun. You keep on gaming. See you next time.